She's already moving before she even decides to. The coffee pot trembles in Amara Bello's hand, not from fear, but from the effort of holding back what she wants to say to the 4 men at table 9. She's waited tables at Miller's Diner for 6 years. Long enough to know the difference between a customer having a bad day and a group of grown men deciding that an old man in a threadbare coat is today's entertainment. "Sir, we didn't order for a beggar," one of them says, loud enough for the whole diner to hear, and kicks the chair out from under him just as he tries to sit. The old man catches himself on the table edge. His hands are shaking, not from anger, from humiliation. He's maybe 70, wearing a coat too thin for the cold, and something in his eyes says he used to matter. Whatever brought him this low? He's still standing with his spine straight, still saying nothing back. That silence is what breaks her. She sets the coffee pot down harder than she means to. Before you keep watching, if you believe kindness should never be a performance, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me where in the world you're watching from tonight. You're going to want to remember this moment. Everything that happens next traces back to it. "He's sitting right here," Amara says, pulling the chair back into place herself. Her voice doesn't shake, even though her hands still do. "And you 3 are going to lower your voices, or you can find another diner to spend your money in." The men laugh, actually laugh like she's told a joke. One of them, blonde, expensive watch, leans back in his seat. "You're going to throw us out?" Over him. "I don't need to throw you out." She meets his eyes and doesn't blink. "You'll leave on your own once you realize how small you look right now." Something shifts in the room. A few regulars at the counter go quiet. The cook, Ronnie, appears in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel still in his hand, watching. And the old man, he's staring up at Amara like she said something in a language he didn't expect to hear again, something he thought the world had stopped speaking. The blonde man's jaw tightens. He throws a 20 on the table, more insult than payment, and the 3 of them shove past her on their way out, muttering words Amara's heard 100 times before. Words that used to sting. Tonight they don't even land. She turns back to the old man, and her whole posture softens, the way it does with someone's grandmother, someone's father. "I'm sorry about that," she says, crouching slightly so she's not looming over him. "Let me get you something warm." "On the house." He doesn't answer right away. His eyes are wet, and he's looking at her the way you look at someone when you're trying to memorize their face for later. "Why did you do that?" he finally asks. His accent is faint but present, careful English, learned rather than native, each word placed like it costs something. "Because nobody deserves to be someone's joke," Amara says simply. "Especially not in my section." He almost smiles. "Almost. You remind me of someone," he murmurs, more to himself than to her. "Someone I have not been able to find in a very long time." There's a flicker of something in the way he says it, grief, maybe, or the ghost of a memory he's been carrying so long it's worn smooth like a stone in his pocket. Amara doesn't push. She's learned, working the graveyard shift at a diner off the interstate, that people carry things they're not ready to set down. So she just brings him the soup, the good bread, the coffee that's actually fresh and not the sludge from 6 hours ago, and she doesn't charge him a dime, and she doesn't tell her manager. What she doesn't know, what she has no possible way of knowing, is that the old man's phone, tucked inside the lining of that thin coat, has not rung in 4 days because he switched it off on purpose. Turned it off so that no one could find him. Not his driver. Not his assistant. Not his son. Because for the first time in longer than he can remember, an old man wanted to know what the world looked like when nobody knew his name. He finishes the soup slowly, watching Amara move between tables with an ease that comes from exhaustion, not joy. She's covering someone else's shift. She hasn't sat down in 5 hours, and there's a hospital bracelet-shaped indent on her wrist she keeps absently touching, like it means something she doesn't want to think about right now. When she comes back to clear his bowl, he reaches into his coat and sets something on the table. Not money. A small, worn photograph, corners soft from years of handling. "Have you seen a woman who looks like this?" he asks. It would have been many years ago now. Amara picks it up out of politeness more than hope, and the moment her eyes land on the photograph, she goes still. Completely still. Because she has seen that face before she's seen it in the mirror, in the shape of her own mother's smile, in a photo album buried in a box her mother told her never to open until she was gone. "Where?" Amara whispers. "Did you get this picture?" The old man's hands begin to shake again, this time not from humiliation. The old man doesn't answer at first. His eyes are fixed on Amara's face now with an intensity that makes her want to step back, except her feet won't move. Ronnie calls something from the kitchen about table 6, and Amara doesn't even hear it. "Tell me your mother's name," the old man says quietly. "Please. Why does that matter to you?" Amara's voice comes out sharper than she intends, guarded now, the photograph still trembling slightly in her fingers. She spent her whole life being told not to ask questions about that box in her mother's closet. Her mother went quiet every time it came up, and eventually Amara stopped asking, because some silences feel like walls you shouldn't climb. "Because," the old man says, "I have spent 30 years searching for the daughter of a woman who saved my life and asked for nothing in return. I promised her before she disappeared from that place that I would repay her one day. I never found her again. And now a stranger in a diner defends an old fool from public humiliation with the exact same fire in her eyes that this woman had." He taps the photograph gently. "Fate is not usually so generous. So I ask again, please. Her name." Amara's throat tightens. "Adiz," she whispers. "Adiz Bello." The old man closes his eyes like he's just been struck, and when he opens them again, there are tears sliding freely down the lines of his face, and he doesn't bother wiping them away. "Then God has answered a prayer I stopped believing anyone was listening to." Before Amara can ask what any of this means, before she can demand to know who he is, what happened between him and a mother who's been dead for 3 years, why a photograph she's never seen exists at all, the diner's bell chimes, and 4 black SUVs pull into the gravel lot outside. Headlights cutting through the dark like something out of a film she never expected to be standing in. Ronnie mutters, "What in the world?" from the kitchen doorway. The old man's whole body goes rigid. Not with fear, with resignation. The posture of a man whose hiding place has just been found. "They tracked the phone," he murmurs, mostly to himself. "I switched it off, but they always find a way." Who tracked what phone? Amara's pulse is climbing now, and she doesn't understand why her hands are shaking along with his. "Who are you?" He doesn't answer. The diner door swings open, and 6 men in tailored black suits move in with a kind of precision that doesn't belong in a roadside diner at 11 at night. No shouting, no chaos, just controlled urgency, eyes scanning every table until they land on the old man in the threadbare coat. One of them, older, silver at the temples, breaks into something close to relief. "Mr. Hahn," he says, bowing his head slightly. "We have been searching for 4 days. Your son has not slept." He believes, the man's voice catches. "He believes something has happened to you." Amara's stomach drops. Mr. Hahn. The name means nothing to her yet, and everything is about to. "I am fine, Jae-sung," the old man Mr. Hahn says, waving a tired hand. "I needed time alone. Time to think, without 100 people asking my opinion on things that do not matter. Sir, with respect, your son needs to know you're safe. He is prepared to fly back from Seoul tonight if we do not call within the hour." Something in Amara's chest goes cold and electric at once. "Oh, fly back. 100 people asking his opinion. This isn't an old man who lost his way home. This is someone who mattered enough that 6 men in suits and 4 SUVs came looking. Someone whose safety could pull a person across an ocean in a single night. Who exactly is your son?" Amara asks, and her voice sounds smaller than she means it to. Mr. Hahn looks at her, and for the first time since she met him an hour ago, there's something like guilt in his expression. The look of a man who let a lie sit comfortably for far too long because the truth was easier to carry alone. "My son," he says slowly, "runs one of the largest shipping and technology conglomerates in East Asia. Forbes calls him the silent emperor, because he has not given an interview in 6 years. Tonight, he believes his father is either dead in a ditch or kidnapped, because I turned off my phone to eat a bowl of soup in peace and remember, for one evening, what it felt like to be an ordinary man again." The bodyguard named Jae-sung is already dialing, murmuring urgently in Korean into his phone, and Amara can hear one word repeated on the other end, tinny and desperate, before the call even connects properly. Boji, Boji, Boji. Father. Amara sets the photograph down on the table like it's suddenly too heavy to hold. Her mind racing to reconcile the frightened, humiliated old man from 20 minutes ago with whatever this new reality is trying to tell her. And underneath all of it, the question about her own mother, about the debt this stranger claims he owes her family, sits there unanswered, glowing like a coal she can't yet touch. Mr. Han, she says carefully, who are you to my mother? And why does the son of a billionaire need his father back so badly that he's about to get on a plane in the middle of the night? Mr. Han opens his mouth to answer. That's when the phone in Jae-sung's hand switches to speaker, and a voice low, controlled, but fraying at the edges with something close to panic fills the diner. Where is he? Tell me exactly where he is. I am already on my way to the airport. Jae-sung's eyes flicked toward Amara, then toward Mr. Han, uncertain how much to say with a stranger standing 3 feet away. But Mr. Han reaches over and takes the phone himself, his voice steadying the moment his son's panic reaches him. Miho, he says gently. I am safe. I am sitting in a diner in Ohio eating the best soup I have had in 20 years. There's a pause on the line so long Amara wonders if the call dropped. Then the voice returns, quieter now, stripped of its composure. 4 days, a boji. 4 days with no contact. I called the police in 3 states. I thought, the voice breaks, just slightly. Just enough that Amara feels it in her own chest even though she's never heard this man's voice before tonight. I thought I had lost you the way I lost her. Mr. Han closes his eyes. I know. I'm sorry. I needed to disappear for a while and remember what an ordinary life feels like, before it disappears from me entirely. You are not well enough to disappear, a boji. Your doctor said. My doctor says many things. Mr. Han cuts him off, but softly, the way a father silences a son who said something too true to sit with. Miho, I have something to tell you, and I need you to listen without interrupting, because I have waited 30 years to say it and I refuse to let you talk me out of the moment. Amara watches the old man's face transform as he speaks, the exhaustion of the last 4 days sliding off him, replaced by something lit from within, urgent and almost young. I found her daughter, he says. The woman who saved my life in Busan, the one I told you about since you were a boy, the one I promised I would repay. Her daughter is standing in front of me right now. Her name is Amara. Silence again. Then very quietly, almost too quiet for the phone to carry it. Say that again. I found her, Miho. After 30 years. Amara doesn't understand the reference Busan, a debt, 30 years, but she understands the son's voice well enough to know that whatever this story is, it isn't a footnote in Mr. Han's life. It's the center of it. I'm coming, the voice on the phone says. No hesitation now, urgency sharpening every syllable. Don't let her leave. Whatever it takes, I don't care what it costs, do not let her leave that diner. The call ends before Amara can even process the demand hanging in it. She looks at Mr. Han, at the 6 men in suits now standing at a respectful distance near the door, at Ronnie still frozen in the kitchen doorway holding a dish towel like a shield, and she feels the ground tilting slightly beneath a life that, 1 hour ago, was simple in its exhaustion, rent due Friday, a mother 3 years gone, a diner shift that never seemed to end. I think, she says slowly, you need to start from the beginning. All of it. Now. Mr. Han nods, folding his hands together the way men do when they're about to hand someone a weight they've carried alone for far too long. 30 years ago, I was a young engineer, not yet wealthy, not yet anyone of consequence. I was in Busan on business when I collapsed in the street, a heart condition no one had diagnosed yet. Most people stepped over me. One woman did not. His voice catches. She was a foreigner, working as a caretaker for an elderly family nearby. She dragged me to a hospital herself, paid for the first hour of my treatment with money she did not have, and stayed with me until my own family could be reached, because she said no person should wake up alone and frightened in a country that was not their own. Amara's hand drifts, unconsciously, to the photograph still sitting on the table. Her name was Adiz, Mr. Han continues. She told me she had a daughter back home, a little girl she was working abroad to provide for. When I recovered enough to find her again and repay her, truly repay her, the way her kindness deserved, she had already left the country. No forwarding address. No number. I searched for years. I built almost everything I built since, in part, because I could not stop thinking that if I became someone significant enough, the world would eventually put her back in my path. He looks up at Amara, eyes glistening. Tonight, in a diner, over a bowl of soup, it finally did. Before Amara can respond, before she can even begin to unpack 30 years compressed into 60 seconds, headlights sweep across the diner windows again, this time a single black car, moving faster than the SUVs did, tires crunching hard against the gravel. That was fast, Jae-sung mutters, checking his watch. He was already at a private airstrip when he called, Mr. Han says quietly, something between pride and worry in his voice. My son does not wait when it matters. The diner door opens, and the man who steps through it is nothing like Amara expected, not the cold, distant billionaire from the tabloids she's glimpsed on magazine covers at the grocery checkout, but someone whose composed exterior is visibly cracking at the seams. His tie loosened. His eyes scanning the room until they land on his father first, relief flooding his face for exactly 1 second. Then his eyes move to Amara, and everything about him goes still. You're her, he says, not a question. You're Adiz's daughter. Amara opens her mouth to answer, but the words catch, because something about the way he's looking at her, like she's a ghost he never expected to have to face, like her presence rearranges something he thought was settled 30 years ago, makes her realize this story is far from finished being told. I don't even know your name, she says instead. A faint, exhausted, almost smile crosses his face. Han Miho, he says. And I believe I owe your family a debt that has waited 3 decades too long to be paid. Amara doesn't know what to say to a debt she never knew existed, so she says the only thing that feels true. You don't owe me anything. Whatever happened between your father and my mother, that's theirs, not mine. Miho studies her for a moment too long, the way people study something they're trying to decide whether to trust. My father does not think that way. And frankly, neither do I. He glances at the old man, who is watching this exchange with the quiet satisfaction of a man who has just set something in motion he cannot take back. May we sit? There is more to this than a debt. Amara hesitates, then gestures to the booth, sliding in across from them both because some part of her, the part that still remembers her mother going silent whenever a certain topic came too close, knows she needs to hear whatever comes next. Your mother did not just save my father's life, Miho says, choosing his words with the care of a man used to being recorded, quoted, misunderstood. She refused money afterward. Do you understand how unusual that is? My father tried to give her the equivalent of a year's salary. She said she did not save him to be paid. She said she did it because somebody once did the same for her, and she was only repaying a debt of her own. Pauses. That is not something you forget, Ms. Bello. That is something that changes how a person sees the world. She never told me any of this, Amara says quietly. I didn't even know she'd been to Korea. I thought she said she worked overseas for a family when I was small. That's it. That's all I ever knew. There is a reason for that too, I suspect, Mr. Han says gently. May I ask, how did she pass? Amara's fingers tighten around the edge of the table. Heart failure. 3 years ago. Sudden. The doctors said there were warning signs for years, but she never told anyone. Never went in for testing. She always said we didn't have insurance for that kind of thing, and there wasn't time to worry about it anyway. Something passes between father and son, a look Amara can't quite read, heavy with unspoken grief and something closer to guilt. She had a heart condition, Mr. Han repeats slowly. The same as mine. Lots of people have heart conditions, Amara says, though her pulse is picking up without her permission. The same rare arrhythmia my doctors diagnosed me with, 4 years after she saved my life, Mr. Han says. I remember she mentioned once feeling dizzy on her feet some mornings. I told her to see a cardiologist. She laughed it off. I always wondered, his voice thins. If the condition she recognized in me, she recognized because she had it herself, and never told anyone, because telling someone would have meant asking for help she did not believe she deserved. Amara feels something crack open in her chest, an old grief resurfacing with new, sharper edges. Her mother worked 3 jobs most of Amara's childhood and never once complained, never once asked anyone for anything, not even when the lights got shut off twice one winter and she told Amara it was just for fun, like camping. She died standing at the stove, according to the coroner. Standing, cooking dinner, silent about a pain she'd apparently been carrying quite literally her entire life. If we had found her sooner, Miho says quietly. There are treatments. Preventative procedures. My father has funded a cardiac research foundation for exactly this condition for the past decade, hoping, I think, that somewhere in the data, in the doctors he was training, in the technology he was building, some trace of the debt he owed her might eventually reach her, even if he never found her himself. He looks at Amara now, something raw showing through the composed exterior. We were 15 years too late to save her. I do not intend to be a single day too late for you. The words land heavier than Amara expects, and she pulls back slightly, some old defensive instinct rising. What does that mean? What are you offering me? Before Miho can answer, the diner door swings open again, hard enough that the bell above it clatters violently against the glass. A woman strides in an expensive coat, sharp heels clicking against the linoleum, phone already raised and recording before she's fully through the door. Han Miho, she says, voice pitched for effect, clearly performing for whoever's watching this footage live. Care to explain to your shareholders why the CEO of Han Dynamics abandoned an emergency board vote to chase a diner waitress across state lines? The diner goes dead silent. Ronnie's dish towel slips from his hand. Miho's jaw tightens, composure snapping back into place like armor. Jiwoo, turn that off. I don't think I will. She smiles, and it doesn't reach her eyes. Not when half the board is already asking whether your father's disappearance and your sudden abandonment of a $2 billion merger vote tonight are related. Her gaze slides to Amara, cold and assessing, cataloging her uniform, her tired eyes, the coffee stains on her apron. And certainly not when I finally understand why. Amara's stomach drops. What is she talking about? Mr. Han's face has gone pale, and Miho's hands have curled into fists beneath the table, and for the first time since he walked through that door radiating quiet authority, Han Miho looks like a man who has just realized the ground beneath him was never as solid as he believed. Tell her, Jiwoo says, still recording, still smiling that cold, satisfied smile. Tell her what tonight's board vote was actually about, Miho. Tell her whose company you were prepared to sell control of to me the moment you walked out of that boardroom to chase a ghost. Miho's silence stretches half a second too long, and in that silence, Amara understands that whatever is coming next will change how she sees this entire night. There is no need for theatrics, Jiwoo, Miho says finally, voice even, though a muscle works in his jaw. The board vote is a private matter. Was private, Jiwoo corrects, tilting her phone slightly to catch Amara's face in frame, and Amara instinctively turns away from the lens, some old instinct telling her that whatever this woman wants, it isn't the truth, it's leverage. Until you walked out mid-session without a word of explanation to the board your own father built. Some of us are wondering, quite reasonably, whether the Han family is still fit to hold controlling shares at all. Mr. Han's hands tighten on the table. You have no right to bring this into a place that has nothing to do with it. I have every right. Jiwoo's smile sharpens. I hold 12% of Han Dynamics in case anyone's forgotten, and tonight's vote was going to decide whether that stake grows to a controlling position because your son, Mr. Han, was seriously entertaining my offer before he vanished from the room like a man running from a ghost. Her eyes flick to Amara again. Now I see exactly what kind of ghost. That's enough. Miho's voice drops, quiet in a way that's somehow more forceful than shouting. Ms. Bello has nothing to do with company matters. Turn off the camera, Jiwoo, or I will have security remove you from this building. It's a public diner, Miho. I can stand wherever I like. But she lowers the phone slightly, satisfaction still curling at the edge of her mouth, like she's already gotten exactly what she came for. I'll just say this for the sake of clarity, since you seem intent on keeping our waitress friend in the dark. She looks at Amara directly now. 3 hours ago, your new friend was one signature away from selling 40% of his father's company to me. A deal that would have given me effective control of Han Dynamics within 18 months. He walked out before the vote finished mid-session. No explanation the moment his father's location was confirmed. Her gaze slides back to Miho. Rather expensive detour, wouldn't you say? All to chase down the daughter of some woman from 30 years ago. Amara feels something cold settle in her chest. A suspicion she doesn't want to have but can't quite stop. Wait. He turns to Miho. You were selling the company. Tonight. While you were flying out here. It's not that simple, Miho says, and for the first time. His composure cracks visibly, something like exhaustion bleeding through. The merger proposal has been on the table for months. It was never something I wanted. My board has been pressuring me for over a year. Ever since, he stops himself. Ever since what? Amara presses. Mr. Han answers instead, quietly, like a man confessing something he's ashamed of. Ever since I began transferring shares out of my own name and into a private trust. The board believes I am no longer of sound mind to manage significant holdings. They have been maneuvering to force a sale for over a year, using my age, my health, my disappearances as justification. He looks down at his hands. Tonight was meant to be the vote that ended it. Jiwoo's faction has been courting my son for weeks, promising him control of a smaller, more manageable company if he simply let the larger sale go through. And I said no, Miho says, sharp now, meeting Amara's eyes directly. Every time. I have said no every time it has been raised. Because this company is not just numbers to sell to the highest bidder, it is 50 years of my father's life. But tonight, in the middle of a vote I was already losing, security called to say my father's location had finally been confirmed. I did not think twice. I walked out. His voice softens, almost pleading now. You have to understand I have spent 30 years hearing about the woman who saved my father's life and vanished. The moment I heard he had been found, alive, safe, with her daughter standing beside him, nothing else mattered. Not the board. Not the vote. Not even the company. Jiwoo laughs softly without humor. How romantic. Explain that to the 14,000 employees who now have a controlling shareholder walking away from her own board meeting, because a boy's storybook debt from 3 decades ago matters more to him than the company that pays them. The words land like a slap, and Amara can feel every eye in the diner on this booth, now Ronnie frozen behind the counter, the 2 remaining late-night regulars pretending not to listen, the 6 bodyguards near the door exchanging uneasy glances. I didn't ask you to walk away from anything, Amara says quietly, standing now, her chair scraping against the floor. I didn't ask for any of this. I served an old man a bowl of soup because someone was cruel to him. That's all this was supposed to be. Amara Miho starts. No. She shakes her head, feeling suddenly, violently out of place in her stained apron among tailored suits and boardroom betrayals and 30-year-old debts she never asked to inherit. I have a shift to finish. Have rent due Friday. I don't have room in my life for. She gestures vaguely at all of it, the SUVs, the bodyguards, the recording phone. Whatever this is. She turns to walk away. And that's when Jiwoo says the thing that stops her cold, voice pitched low now, almost gentle, almost kind, which somehow makes it worse. Before you go, Jiwoo says, you should probably know that your mother's death wasn't quite the accident the coroner's report says it was. I did my research the moment Miho's security team started tracking a woman named Bello 3 days ago. There's a detail in that report your family was never shown. Amara freezes mid-step. What detail? She says, not turning around. Jiwoo smiles, the smile of someone who has just found the one card capable of controlling every person left standing in that room. That's information, she says softly, that I'm willing to trade. Amara turns back slowly, every nerve in her body suddenly alert in a way it hasn't been since the night the hospital called about her mother. Trade for what? Nothing extravagant. Ji-woo tucks her phone into her coat pocket. All business now. The theatrical performance dropped like a costume she no longer needs. I want Miho's signature on the merger by Friday. That's all. You give me that, Miho. And I hand her whatever my investigator found in that coroner's file. Simple exchange. You're using her mother's death as leverage in a business deal. Miho's voice has gone dangerously quiet. The kind of quiet Amara imagines comes right before something breaks. Do you have any decency at all? I have 12% of a company and a board vote I intend to win, Ji-woo says. Decency doesn't show up on a balance sheet. Mr. Han rises from the booth slowly, using the table for support, and for a moment he looks every one of his years, fragile in a way the earlier version of him, the one being mocked at table 9, never quite showed. Ji-woo SSI. I have known your father for 20 years. He would be ashamed to see what you have become. My father sold his stake to your family for pennies on the dollar because he trusted a handshake instead of a contract, Ji-woo says, something bitter flashing beneath the composure now. I don't make that mistake twice. Amara's mind is racing, trying to hold two competing fires at once, the sudden, sickening possibility that there's something wrong with the story she's told herself about her mother's death for 3 years, and the growing certainty that whatever Ji-woo knows, she's using it like a weapon, which means it's true enough to hurt. Tell me, Amara says. Just tell me. I don't care about your merger. I don't care about the company. Tell me what's in that report. Ji-woo studies her for a long moment, something almost like reluctant respect crossing her face. You really don't care about the money at all, do you? It isn't a question. Fine. She pulls out a folded printout from her coat, a single page, and sets it on the table without ceremony. Your mother's cardiac event 3 years ago wasn't sudden onset. According to the private lab report my investigator obtained, not the public coroner's summary your family received, she had been prescribed medication for the exact arrhythmia Mr. Han has, 8 months before she died. A cardiologist in Columbus flagged it as urgent. The prescription was filled once. He pauses. It was never filled again. And 2 weeks before she died, she called that same cardiologist's office and cancelled all future appointments, citing cost. The words hit Amara like something physical, air punched clean out of her lungs. She knew, she whispers. She knew for 8 months, and she never said anything to me. She likely couldn't afford the treatment, Mr. Han says gently, and there's real grief in his voice now, not performance. The medication for that condition, without proper insurance, can run into thousands of dollars a month. If she was working to support you alone. She was working 3 jobs, Amara says, voice cracking now, all her earlier composure dissolving. She told me everything was fine. She told me not to worry about money, that we were fine, that I should focus on school instead of picking up extra shifts to help. Amara presses a hand to her mouth. She let herself die instead of telling her own daughter she was sick, because she didn't want me to spend money on her that we didn't have. Immediately after this moment, before Amara can even take a full breath through the grief, if this story is affecting you the way it's affecting everyone watching right now, drop a comment below and let me know. Tell me what you would have done in her place. And if you haven't already, hit that like button, because moments like this are exactly why we tell these stories. Miho reaches out, not quite touching her, just close enough to offer steadiness if she wants it. Amara. My father has funded a cardiac foundation for a decade specifically because of this condition. Free screenings, subsidized treatment, research grants, all of it exists because he never stopped hoping it might eventually reach the woman who saved his life. If she had known that foundation existed. She didn't know, Amara says bitterly. Because nobody ever found her. Because you spent 30 years searching in the wrong direction while she was 2 states over. Dying quietly so she wouldn't be a burden. The diner has gone utterly silent. Even Ji-woo, for once, doesn't look triumphant. She looks like someone who's realized, a beat too late, that the weapon she chose cuts deeper than she expected. There is something else, Ji-woo says, quieter now, almost reluctant. In the report, a note from the cardiologist's office, from the final cancelled appointment call. She hesitates, glancing at Amara like she's second-guessing whether to say it at all. Your mother told the receptionist she couldn't justify spending the money on herself when she was, quote, still saving for my daughter's future. She had a savings account, Ms. Bello. One the coroner's report never mentioned, because it wasn't relevant to cause of death. What savings account? Amara's voice is barely a whisper now. Ji-woo's expression flickers something almost like guilt, quickly buried. According to bank records my investigator accessed illegally, I'll admit there was just over $40,000 in an account under your mother's name when she died. An account you were never told about. One that, as far as my investigator could determine, has never been claimed. Amara stares at her, the diner tilting slightly around her. Ronnie's face pale behind the counter. Mr. Han's hand pressed to his own chest as though something in it hurts. Miho watching her with an expression she can't name. That's not possible, Amara says. We didn't have that kind of money. We never had that kind of money. And yet, Ji-woo says quietly, sliding a second folded page across the table. There it is. $41,600. Deposited in increments over 11 years. The earliest deposit was made 2 months after a wire transfer arrived from a bank in Busan, South Korea. Every person at that table goes still. Mr. Han's eyes lift slowly to meet Amara's, and in them she sees the answer arriving before he even speaks it aloud. I sent that money, he says. 30 years ago. I never stopped trying to find her. And apparently, Ms. Bello for 11 years, she never stopped receiving it. The words settle over the table like something too heavy to hold. Amara's hands are trembling now, not from the cold night air but from a truth rearranging everything she thought she understood about her own childhood. You found her, Amara says slowly. You said you never found her again. You just told me that an hour ago. I found an address, Mr. Han says, and there's shame threading through his voice now, old and unresolved. 11 years after Busan. A private investigator I hired located a woman matching her description working in Cleveland. I did not have the courage to approach her directly. She had made it clear, in the way she vanished, that she wanted nothing from our family. So I did the only thing I believed I was permitted to do. I wired money, quietly, anonymously, once a year, to an account I was told belonged to her. I told myself it was enough. I told myself that if she never spent it, it meant she did not need it, and if she needed it, she would spend it, and either way I had honored the debt. He looks down at his folded hands. I never once considered that a proud woman raising a daughter alone might let that money sit untouched for 11 years, refusing to spend a cent of a stranger's charity, while her own heart was quietly failing her. She never touched it, Amara whispers, and something furious rises up beneath the grief now, directed at no one and everyone at once. She let herself die with $40,000 sitting in an account, because she'd rather die than take money she didn't earn. That sounds, Miho says quietly, exactly like the woman my father has described to me my entire life. Amara sits back down hard, the fight going out of her all at once, replaced by something raw. Why didn't she tell me any of this? Why keep an entire country's worth of history a secret from her own daughter? Mr. Han is the one who answers, his voice gentle, careful, like a man choosing each word for the weight it will carry. I can only guess, Ms. Bello, having known her for the single week our lives intersected 30 years ago. But I suspect she did not want you to grow up believing your survival depended on the mercy of a rich family overseas. She wanted you to believe you earned your own life, your own future, not one funded quietly from a distance, by a debt she considered beneath her dignity to acknowledge. Amara presses her palms against her eyes, and for a long moment nobody speaks. Not Ji-woo, not Ronnie behind the counter, not the bodyguards near the door pretending they aren't listening to a woman's entire history rewrite itself in real time. There is one more detail, Ji-woo says finally, and something in her tone has changed flatter now, stripped of its earlier cruelty, as though even she has run out of appetite for using this as a weapon. The account. It isn't in your mother's name alone. Amara's head snaps up. What do you mean? Ji-woo hesitates, glancing at Mr. Han before continuing, some silent question passing between them that Amara doesn't understand. It's a joint account, Jiwoo says slowly. Opened under two names. Adiz Bello, Oz, and Daniel Bello. The color drains from Mr. Han's face entirely. My son, Amara says, confusion knotting tighter in her chest. That's not possible. I don't have a brother. I'm an only child. Are you certain of that? Jiwoo asks quietly, and there's no triumph left in her voice at all now, only something that looks disturbingly like pity. Because according to the account's opening documentation, Daniel Bello was listed as a co-holder, born the same year your mother returned from Busan. 11 months to be exact, after the week she spent caring for a dying stranger in a foreign hospital. The diner is dead silent. Mr. Han has gone rigid in his seat, and Miho's eyes are moving rapidly between his father and Amara, doing math none of them are ready to say aloud. Aboji, Miho says slowly, quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. What is she saying? Mr. Han doesn't answer. He's staring at Amara now with an expression that has nothing to do with gratitude or debt or 30 years of searching something far more personal, far more frightening, dawning behind his eyes. 11 months, he repeats hoarsely, almost to himself. Adiz left Busan in March. Daniel would have been born in February. Say what you're thinking, Amara says, though some part of her already knows, already feels the ground shifting permanently beneath a life she thought she'd fully accounted for. Say it out loud. Mr. Han lifts his eyes to hers, and his voice, when it finally comes, is barely a breath. Ms. Bello, he says, I do not believe I only owed your mother a debt of gratitude. Amara feels the world tilt sideways, the diner's fluorescent lights suddenly too bright, too sharp. What are you saying? I am saying, Mr. Han says, each word costing him something visible, that I may have a son I never knew existed, a son your mother never told me about, a son who would be your brother. He presses a shaking hand to his mouth. Daniel, I don't have a brother, Amara says again, but the certainty in her voice is cracking now, because somewhere in the back of her mind a memory is surfacing she hasn't let herself examine in years. Her mother, late one night, murmuring a name in her sleep that never made sense. Daniel. Forgive me, Daniel. Amara had always assumed it was grief for a miscarriage, something private and painful her mother never explained. When exactly were you born, Ms. Bello? Mr. Han asks gently. March. 3 years after whatever happened between you and my mother, according to this math. Amara's voice wavers. If there was a Daniel born the year before me, he'd be older. He'd have been alive when I was born. I would have known. Unless, Miho says slowly, understanding arriving in his voice like something dreadful. He did not survive. Or he was given up. Or he is out there somewhere, Mr. Han finishes, and Adiz chose, for reasons only she understood, to raise one child and give away another, or to separate them for their protection, or... He stops himself, visibly disturbed by his own speculation. I do not know. I am only guessing, and guessing recklessly, at a woman's private grief. Jiwoo, who has gone very quiet through all of this, finally speaks again. Her voice softer than Amara has heard it all night. There's a forwarding address associated with a small disbursement from that account, 18 years ago. A group home in Toledo. I didn't dig further. I didn't think it was mine to dig into. She almost looks ashamed now. The leverage she thought she was holding having transformed in real time into something far heavier than a bargaining chip. I can send you what I have. If you want it. Amara stares at the folded page still sitting on the table, at the photograph of her mother's young face beside it, at the old man across from her whose life has somehow, impossibly, braided itself into her own 30 years before she was born. I came to work tonight, Amara says quietly, mostly to herself, to serve coffee and go home and sleep 4 hours before my next shift. I didn't ask for a father. I didn't ask for a company. I certainly didn't ask for a brother I've never met. She looks up, meeting Mr. Han's eyes, then Miho's. But if there's even a chance he's real, if there's even a chance my mother spent her whole life carrying a secret this heavy alone, I need to know. Tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight. Mr. Han nods slowly, something resolute settling over his grief. Then we will find him. Whatever it costs. Whatever it takes. It will cost the merger, Jiwoo says quietly, glancing at Miho. If you spend the next 72 hours chasing a lost brother instead of signing my deal, the board will vote without you Friday morning. You will lose control of your father's company either way. Miho doesn't hesitate. Then let them vote. Miho, Mr. Han starts. No, Aboji. Miho's voice is steady now, stripped of the composed Seo mask entirely. Something rawer and more certain underneath it. You spent 30 years building an empire partly to repay a debt to a woman who saved your life. I am not going to lose the one chance we have to finish what you started, over a boardroom vote. He looks at Amara. Whatever happens to the company, we are going to find your brother. That is not a negotiation. Jiwoo studies him for a long moment, something unreadable passing behind her eyes, not quite respect, not quite regret, but close to both. You're going to lose everything your father built, over a stranger you met 4 hours ago. She's not a stranger, Miho says quietly. She's family. Whether the board understands that or not. Amara feels something crack open in her chest at those words. Something she hasn't let herself feel in the 3 years since she buried her mother alone with no family left to grieve beside her, the terrifying, fragile possibility of not being alone anymore. Toledo, she says, standing, her exhaustion from the double shift forgotten entirely. You said there was a group home in Toledo. How fast can we get there? Jae-sung is already pulling out his phone, already calculating routes, already speaking low and urgent into it. And Mr. Han rises from the booth with more energy than Amara has seen from him all night, as though 30 years of searching has suddenly compressed into a single, unbearable urgency. 2 hours by car, Jae-sung says. 40 minutes by helicopter. There is a private pad 11 miles from here. Then we go by air, Mr. Han says. I have waited 30 years. I do not intend to wait 1 hour longer than I must. Amara looks around the diner one last time at Ronnie, wide-eyed behind the counter, at the coffee pot still sitting cold on table 9, at the life she walked into this shift believing was simple and small. She unties her apron with shaking hands and sets it on the counter. Ronnie, she says, tell Denise I quit. Tell her I'm sorry for the short notice. Ronnie just nods, too stunned to form words. And as Amara steps out into the cold night air, flanked by a billionaire's bodyguards, walking toward a helicopter she never imagined she'd set foot in, she has no idea that the group home in Toledo holds a secret far more devastating than a lost brother, a secret that will force her to question not just who her mother was, but who Amara herself really is. The helicopter blades are still slicing the cold air when Amara's boots hit the tarmac, Mr. Han moving faster than a man his age should be able to. Miho's hand hovering near his father's elbow in case his legs give out from the urgency of it all. The group home sits at the end of a quiet residential street in Toledo, brick and modest, the kind of building that has held 100 children's worst nights and never once made the news. A night supervisor named Marlene meets them at the door, wary of 4 black cars and a helicopter noise still fading overhead, until Mr. Han says the name. Daniel Bello. Something shifts in Marlene's face immediately. Recognition, then caution, then something closer to grief. You're here about Daniel, she says slowly. After all this time. You knew him, Amara says, stepping forward. I'm his sister. I didn't even know he existed until tonight. Marlene studies her for a long moment, then exhales like she's been carrying something for years and finally has somewhere to set it down. Come in. This isn't a conversation for a doorway. Inside, under fluorescent light that hums too loud in the silence, Marlene pulls a thin file from a locked cabinet, hands trembling slightly as she opens it. Daniel came to us at 4 years old. Your mother, she says, looking at Amara, brought him herself. She told us she couldn't care for 2 children alone in a new country, working the hours she worked. She said she was giving him the best chance she could, one child raised with her full attention, one child raised somewhere stable, with resources she couldn't provide. Marlene's voice thins. She visited every month for years. Then the visits stopped. We assumed she'd passed away or moved on. We never knew she'd kept another child of her own the whole time. Amara's hands are pressed against her mouth now. 3 years of grief for her mother suddenly compounding into grief for a brother she never got to know. A sacrifice she never understood was being made in her name. Where is he now? Mr. Han asks, voice raw. Please. I need to know if he is safe. If he is alive. Immediately after this moment, if this story is affecting you the way it's clearly affecting everyone in that room right now, comment below and tell me what you would have done in Adi's place. And hit that like button if you're still holding your breath waiting for what comes next. Marlene hesitates, glancing at the file. Daniel, aged out at 18. Legally changed his name the same year, said he wanted nothing tying him back to a story he considered a lie his whole childhood was built on. I only know because he stayed close to a few of us here. He visits sometimes. She pauses, and something in her expression turns careful. Actually, he was here 3 weeks ago, asking questions about a man named Han. The room goes cold and silent all at once. What kind of questions? Miho asks. He said someone had reached out to him, Marlene says slowly. An investigator working for a woman he wouldn't name, asking about his birth records, his biological father. He wanted to know what we could tell him before he decided whether to respond. She looks at Mr. Han directly now. He already knew who you were, Mr. Han. Long before tonight. He's known for years. Amara feels the floor tilt beneath the revelation. How? How could he possibly have known? Marlene reaches back into the file and pulls out a small bundle of letters, edges soft with age, tied with a faded ribbon. Because someone sent him these. Every year on his birthday for over a decade. No signature. No return address. Just money and a single line each time. She slides the top letter across the table. Amara picks it up with shaking hands and reads the 11 words written in careful, foreign-accented English. Asterisk, I am sorry I could not know you. I am proud regardless. Asterisk. Mr. Han goes completely still, staring at the letter like he's looking at a ghost of his own handwriting. I did not send these, he whispers. I swear to you, I did not know this child existed until tonight. I sent money to an account. I never wrote a single letter. Then who did? Mara asked. Marlene's expression shifts, uncertain now, unsettled by the confusion crossing every face in the room. We assumed it was you, Mr. Han, given the account details linked to the transfers. If it wasn't you, she trails off, the implication hanging heavy in the silent room. Adi's, Miho says quietly. She wrote them. She signed them as though they came from you. She wanted him to believe his father acknowledged him, even though I never knew to, Mr. Han finishes, devastated. She protected him from the truth of my absence by inventing a version of me that cared. She let him believe a lie kinder than the reality. The same way she protected Amara by never telling either of you the other existed. Amara sinks into a chair, overwhelmed by the shape of her mother's silence finally coming into focus. Not cruelty, not concealment for its own sake, but an exhausting decades-long act of love performed entirely alone, protecting 2 children from truths she believed would only hurt them. Where is he tonight? Mr. Han asks, urgency returning to his voice. Right now. Is he safe? Marlene glances toward the window, toward the street outside. Hesitation flickering across her face in a way that makes Amara's stomach drop before the woman even speaks. He called an hour ago, Marlene says slowly. Said he was driving up from Columbus. Said there was something he needed to settle tonight. Before a company merger vote happens on Friday, something about a woman named Ji Woo who'd promised him answers he'd been chasing his entire adult life. She looks at the 4 black cars parked outside, at the exhausted, hopeful faces filling her office. I think, she says quietly, your brother is already on his way here. And I don't think he knows any of you are here waiting for him. Headlights sweep across the window as a single car pulls into the lot outside, engine cutting abruptly in the dark. The car door opens slowly, headlights still cutting across the gravel, and the man who steps out moves with a caution that speaks of someone bracing for disappointment before he's even said a word. He's younger than Amara expected, mid-30s, sharp-jawed, with something in the set of his shoulders that mirrors Mr. Han so closely it makes Amara's breath catch. He stops the moment he sees the black SUVs, the bodyguards, the unfamiliar faces filling Marlene's small office window. "Daniel," Marlene says gently, stepping outside first, her voice pitched to keep him from bolting. "There are some people here. People who've been looking for you a long time." Daniel's eyes move past her, landing first on Mr. Han, and something raw and furious crosses his face. "You're him," he says, voice low and shaking. "You're actually him. After 20 years of nothing, a few letters, a little money, and now suddenly you show up in person." "I did not send the letters," Mr. Han says quietly, stepping forward despite his exhaustion. "I did not know you existed until an hour ago. Your mother sent them. My name. To protect you from the truth that I never knew to look for you." Daniel's jaw tightens, disbelief warring with something more fragile underneath. "That's convenient." "It's the truth," Amara says, stepping out from behind Marlene, and Daniel's eyes land on her for the first time, confusion rippling across his face as he registers a stranger who somehow looks like family. "Who are you?" "Amara," she says, her voice cracking on the name. "Your sister." The word lands like a physical blow. Daniel takes a step back, gravel crunching beneath his boot, and for a moment nobody moves, the whole night suspended in the space between a stranger and a sibling he never knew he had. "Our mother," he finally says, "gave me away. You told me nothing. And you want me to just hug you? Welcome you into a life I spent 18 years in that building behind you, wondering what I'd done wrong to deserve being the one she didn't keep." "She didn't keep me because I was better," Amara says fiercely, tears sliding freely now. "She kept me because she could only afford to raise one child working 3 jobs alone, and she chose to sacrifice her own health hiding a heart condition from both of us so neither of us would ever have to feel like a burden. She wasn't protecting me over you, Daniel. She was drowning, and she made an impossible choice, and she spent the rest of her life quietly bleeding for both decisions." Daniel's composure cracks for the first time, grief flickering raw beneath 20 years of hardened distance. "She's dead," he says. "It isn't a question." 3 years, Amara whispers. "Heart failure. The same condition Mr. Han has. She knew for 8 months and never told either of us, never let herself spend money we didn't have on treatment, because she was still trying to protect us both from a distance." Before Daniel can respond, a second car pulls into the lot, sleek, black, moving with the kind of speed that says whoever's driving already knows exactly where this confrontation is happening. Ji-woo steps out, phone already raised. And this time there's no performance left in her expression, only the look of someone who has finally realized her leverage has spiraled somewhere she never intended. "Daniel," she says carefully, "you weren't supposed to come here yet. We had a plan." The whole group turns toward her, and Amara feels ice settle in her stomach. "A plan," she repeats slowly. "What plan?" Daniel's face shifts, something guilty and cornered flashing across it. "Ji-woo found me 3 weeks ago," he admits, voice tight. "Told me my biological father was Han Dae-sung, one of the wealthiest men in Asia, and that if I came forward publicly right before Friday's merger vote claimed my inheritance rights, made it a media story, it would tank shareholder confidence in the family long enough for her to force through her takeover." He swallows hard. "She offered me $2 million and a stake in the new company if I went along with it." Mr. Han's face drains of color entirely. Miho's jaw locks, fury simmering visibly beneath his composure. "You were going to use a stranger's grief," Miho says slowly, turning to Ji-woo, "as a weapon to steal control of my father's company." "I was going to use the truth," Ji-woo snaps back, though her voice wavers now, some of her earlier control fracturing. "A truth your family kept buried for 30 years because it was inconvenient. I simply intended to make it useful. And tonight," Amara says quietly, looking at Daniel now, everything rearranging in her mind at once, the leverage Ji-woo dangled at the diner, the coincidence of her arriving with exactly the right information at exactly the right moment. "You were never planning to just quietly come forward. You were coming here tonight to confront a family, backed by a woman who paid you to destroy them." Daniel's eyes drop, shame flooding his expression. I didn't know any of you yet, he says, voice breaking. You were just names. A rich family that abandoned me before I was born. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like justice. And now? Amara asks softly. Daniel looks at her, really looks at her. At the sister standing in front of him with their mother's exact same eyes. At the old man whose face carries 30 years of a guilt he never knew to feel. At Miho, whose fury is aimed entirely at the woman who manipulated a grieving stranger rather than at the brother he just discovered. Now, Daniel says quietly. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Jiwoo, sensing the ground shifting beneath her, straightens sharply. The offer still stands, Daniel. $2 million. All you have to do is confirm your identity publicly before Friday's vote. Family or not, that money is real, and it's yours regardless of how tonight ends. No, Daniel says, and the word comes out stronger than anyone expects, surprising even himself. I don't want your money. He looks at Amara. I want to know my sister. I want to understand the woman who spent her whole life protecting both of us from a truth I've spent 20 years hating her for. His voice cracks entirely now. I don't want to be a headline in someone else's takeover. I want to be someone's family. Jiwoo's expression hardens, calculation flickering behind her eyes as she realizes her plan is collapsing in real time. Then you leave me no choice, she says, pulling out her phone again, thumb already moving toward the screen. I'll simply release the story myself. Illegitimate heir, family cover-up. 30-year-old scandal. The board will vote against the Han family regardless of your cooperation. I don't need your permission to destroy what's left of this company's reputation before Friday morning. Her thumb hovers over the send button. The entire group frozen in the gravel lot outside a group home in Toledo, watching a single tap decide the fate of everything Mr. Han spent 50 years building. Wait. Mr. Han's voice cuts through the tension, quieter than anyone expects, and something in its calm makes even Jiwoo pause with her thumb still hovering. Before you send anything, Jiwoo sigh, I would like to say something. Not to stop you. To make certain that whatever you send with full understanding of what it costs you. Jiwoo's jaw tightens, suspicious. Say it quickly. You believe this story will destroy my family, Mr. Han says. A hidden son, a cover-up, a scandal timed conveniently before a vote. But you are not accounting for one thing, because you were not in that diner an hour ago. He looks at Amara, then at Daniel. You will not be exposing a family's shame. You will be exposing a story of a woman who sacrificed everything, her health, her comfort, her own children's knowledge of each other to protect two people she loved more than her own life. The public will not see corruption in that story, Jiwoo sigh. They will see a mother's love so fierce it nearly erased her from her own children's memory of who she was. And they will ask why the woman holding that story hostage chose to weaponize it instead of honoring it. Jiwoo's thumb doesn't move, but her composure cracks visibly, something uncertain flickering behind her eyes for the first time all night. You think sentiment wins boardroom votes, she says, though her voice has lost its earlier edge. No, Mr. Han says simply. I think sentiment wins public opinion. And public opinion, in my experience, moves shareholders faster than any merger clause you've drafted. Release the story if you must. But understand you will not be handing the board a scandal. You will be handing my son the single most powerful piece of goodwill our company has had in a decade, at your own expense. Silence stretches long and heavy across the gravel lot. Jiwoo looks between Amara, Daniel, and Miho, three faces bound together now by a story bigger than any of them anticipated, and something in her posture finally, visibly deflates. You're bluffing, she says, but it comes out uncertain. Try me, Miho says quietly. Jiwoo stares at her phone for a long moment, then slowly lowers it, jaw tight with a particular fury of someone who has just realized they've lost, even though nothing has technically happened yet. This isn't over, she mutters. The vote is still Friday. Merger or not, you abandon that boardroom, Miho. The optics alone. The optics, Miho says, will show a CEO who left an emergency meeting the moment he learned his father was safe, and who spent the following hours reuniting two siblings, a family tragedy kept apart for 30 years. I will let the shareholders decide which story they'd rather be associated with. He looks at her steadily. Go home, Jiwoo. Sleep on it. And ask yourself honestly whether the version of this story you release tomorrow is one you'll be proud of in 10 years. Jiwoo holds his gaze a moment longer, then turns without another word, gravel crunching under her heels as she gets back into her car and drives off into the dark, taillights shrinking until they disappear. For a long moment nobody speaks. Then Daniel exhales shakily, some of the hardened defensiveness finally draining from his shoulders. I almost let her use me, he says quietly, mostly to himself. I almost let 20 years of anger turn me into someone else's weapon. You didn't, Amara says gently, stepping closer. That's what matters. Daniel looks at her, something fragile and searching in his expression. What happens now? I don't even know how to be somebody's brother. I've spent my whole life being nobody's anything. We figure it out, Amara says. Together. Starting tonight. Mr. Han steps forward slowly, and for the first time all evening, he looks less like a billionaire and more like exactly what he is, an old man who has waited 3 decades for a moment he stopped believing would ever come. Daniel, he says, voice thick with emotion he no longer bothers hiding. I cannot undo 20 years of your life spent believing you were abandoned. I can only tell you from this night forward, that will never again be true. Daniel studies him for a long moment, old wounds and cautious hope warring visibly across his face. I don't know if I can call you anything yet, he admits. Not father. Not anything. I need time. Time, Mr. Han says, is the one thing I am finally willing to spend without counting the cost. Immediately after this moment, if you've made it this far and you're feeling everything this family has been through tonight, comment below and tell me the biggest lesson this story taught you. And if this is the kind of story that keeps you up thinking long after the video ends, subscribe now because there's so much more waiting for you. 3 months later, Amara stands in a cardiology research wing bearing a small brass plaque near its entrance, the AMBW Center for Cardiac Care, funded entirely by the Han Family Foundation, offering free screenings and treatment to anyone unable to afford care, exactly the kind of help that might have saved her mother's life had anyone known to offer it in time. Daniel stands beside her now, more at ease than he was that first gravel lot night, still cautious, still learning what it means to have a sister, but present. Mr. Han visits the diner sometimes, quietly, no bodyguards, just an old man who likes the soup and the woman who once defended him without knowing who he was. And Miho, having weathered Friday's vote without Jiwoo's support, kept control of his father's company not because of sentiment alone, but because enough people recognized, in the end, that a man who drops everything for family is exactly the kind of man worth trusting with something larger than himself. Amara often thinks about the version of that night where she simply refills coffee at table 9 and says nothing at all, where an old man eats alone, humiliated, and she goes home to an empty apartment none the wiser. She thinks about how close that ordinary evening came to staying ordinary, and how one small act of decency, offered to a stranger who owed her nothing, unraveled 30 years of silence into something that finally let 2 grieving families become one. Her mother never got to see any of it. Never got to meet the son she gave up to protect him, never got to reconcile with a man whose life she saved, never got to rest without the crushing weight of secrets she carried entirely alone. But somewhere in the quiet, unclaimed corners of the story, Amara likes to believe her mother knows now that the sacrifice was seen, that the love was understood, that the children she split apart to save have finally found their way back to each other. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for a stranger isn't really about the stranger at all. Sometimes it's the universe's way of finally settling a debt that's been waiting 30 years to be repaid.